Today, we have a lot of questions about Tesla we're going to answer. Might Tesla stock fall below $300? When can we expect the new, more affordable vehicles to be released? Given that the new Model Y looks like it'll be delivered sooner than expected, are there signs that Tesla's paid Robotaxi program is on track? And has Tesla's lead been eroded with competitors like BYD now announcing they've got their own autonomous capability? So we've got the bulls here with us today. I've got Jeff Lutz, also known as Mr. Incredible, the Rational Bull, and James from Invest Answers, the Analytical Bull. Welcome, guys.
Hey there.
Okay, well, let's get started right off the bat with the stock. This seems to be the topic that Tesla investors are having. We want to know what's going on. The stock has fallen. So what I did was pulled up here the current price of the stock as of a couple hours ago, and it's $353. It has fallen $16 in the past 5 days. This is the 5-day look. And yesterday, it went as low as $326. Some people started thinking it's going to go down to $300. We had some analysts saying now, I'm going to load up when it gets to $300. Why don't we start with you, James? What is going on with the stock?
Well, to know what's going on with the stock, you've got to have a pretty good feel for what's going on in the world. And we are once again back into the realm of kind of major league FUD. Anything that is in any way alarming, it's been published by mainstream media. There's a ton of concern about the proximity of Elon Musk to different governments around the world, including the United States government. And it is a bizarre time to be alive. But since we're talking about the stock, if you could share this chart real quick, this tells us exactly where we are, where we've come from, and where the support and resistance levels are. So this is a very quick chart here. Let me try and see it myself so I can zoom in. A couple of things. Will we get, I think your first question was, can we get to 300? It's coincidence and confluent that the fact that this is what I call the ATR model. It's called an augmented trading range. Level 4 is exactly $302. So theoretically, it's possible we hit that, but it's also unlikely in a bull market because the blue thing is the trend. The trend is still up despite the big dip. Now, we actually dipped right through a thing called level 5, which is about 362. We're under that by a few bucks. And the question is, where do we go next? I think, given what happens, we could chopsolidate between this kind of 330, which looked like a very solid bottom yesterday, up maybe as low as 325, maybe 320. Maybe if we get a really bad, nasty black swan in the macro, it could drive us down to 300, but it's unlikely. The strategy here is always to layer in, and that's what I've been doing, swapping and layer in to stock. I was waiting for 375, but when we saw that big dip, it looked like it was going to go further, and then it fell down to 350. Bang, get some 340s. Bang, get some, and that's kind of the way to play this right now. But the other crazy stuff that's popping up right now is ARK came out with new price targets, Robotaxi only, and I've been following ARK for years and years since they basically came out because I'm fascinated by their research. And Cathie Wood doesn't get enough credit for nailing their price targets way back in 2019, way ahead of anybody else. But her new price targets here are pretty impressive. And remember, everybody, this is Robotaxi only. If you talk to Cern Basher, bots will be 10x what Robotaxis are, and Robotaxis will be huge by themselves. So I thought this was another one that's interesting to share because people, sometimes they don't know where things are going, but their bear target is $1,500 for 2029. That's a 4.29 from here. That's a 63% annual compound annual growth rate, which is extremely high in traditional markets. Base case, 94% CAGR, $2,600 target. I remember their base case before was $2,700. Looks like they shaved $100 off it and pushed it out a year. The bull target's 4,000, 120% CAGR, which is insane if you come from the traditional world. So that's kind of where we are. And I think, let me see, Morgan Stanley reiterated their bull case because Tesla has a huge data advantage. So that's kind of to tee it off regarding price and outlook. A lot of people get shaken out. A lot of people get fearful. But this is one of those things where you just stack on big dips, on big mean reversions. That's the way I approach it.
I love it. Thank you so much, James. That's great. You always come with these great data points. I guess the question I'm going to ask is who is jumping off and who is coming in? Because like you said, most of the institutional analysts are saying, this Doge situation, it's, I think Dan Ives, what did he just say? He said that it's it's like a lot of talk and no bark, a lot of bark but no bite. Like, okay, but it's not going to really impact anything. And then you've got institutional analysts, one after another, still saying, "Yeah, we believe in Robotaxi." So institutional analysts themselves, it's really funny. It's flipped, isn't it? Like they are more confident about Robotaxi coming than others, and yet, the stock has fallen. So who do you guys think is actually selling and who's buying?
Well, I think weekend retail is selling because
Weekend retail.
they're afraid of PTSD from the Twitter purchase, and this all ties to the OpenAI bid, which I think is only a ruse, because if you know poker and chess, you know exactly what Elon Musk did between his brinkmanship, his poison pilling, his Revloning, whatever you want to call it. And I know, Jeff, you have a lot of thoughts on that too. And we'll get into that because that's a huge topic on people's minds. But the other thing, I think hedge funds are dumping as well because of their fear. But the people that are kind of stacking from an institutional side, I think they're going to continue to buy. But again, retail, which is nearly half of the stock ownership, is afraid of that PTSD, and they have nothing to worry about because Elon is not going to buy OpenAI. I think it's probably like a 1% chance he would.
We'll talk about that. Hey, Jeff, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think there was just a huge weight in the market regarding this open bid. I mean, it really came out of nowhere, $100 billion. But I think what people just need to understand is this is a different time. This is not 2022 where the market was in disastrous shape. We were in a rate hiking regime, and Elon is buying Twitter with probably a third of where his net worth is today. So Elon has many sources of capital. He pulled together this $100 billion bid while he's in the bowels of the White House working on Doge. And while all these things are happening with his companies, and on the side, he pulls together this bid, I think the market overreacts. By the way, I think we have a series of provocateurs. I made a couple of posts just like fintech, and I don't want to get on a soapbox because I know we're going to plow through a lot of things, but just fintech and X, it's at times just turns into an absolute cesspool, and every single announcement turns into it's all connected to, if you can put Tesla in the article or Musk and you can tie some sort of negativity to it, it gets massive amounts of click, and then the business cycle just continues to turn. At the same time, I mean, these are just a lot of distractions. Am I saying like everything's perfect? Nothing should be criticized here. No, I mean, these are a lot of distractions, but at the same time, all Tesla's done, nothing's changed in terms of the guidance they've given this year and what they said they're going to do with Robotaxi and Optimus. In fact, every time Tesla steps up to the microphone, they're actually pulling things in. And because I think people expected a Robotaxi, a site coming up or a city coming up second half of the year, and then they say June. And then people expected some amount of Optimus, layering in the factories, and all of a sudden it's 5 to 10K and then times 10 and times 10 the next 2 years. So I still think we're just in between these waves of exiting being a mostly hardware only business plus FSD plus energy to this massive we're in the crest of this wave coming for Robotaxi. And then when the first city is launching, you're probably going to start seeing dozens, if not hundreds, of Optimus layered into the Tesla factories in the second half of the year. And you are going to see some stunning visuals when that happens. So I think there's a lot of noise in the system, bottom line. And I don't think the media helps. I think the media hurts. I think it's a provocateur type culture. And I think hopefully we can do in these kind of longer form conversations is talk through each of these issues and apply common sense. What are the pros, cons, and where do we see it going?
I'm interested, actually, Jeff, in what you thought about the whole strategy, because it's pretty clear. I think the bigger picture here that rattled the markets is he is clearly trying to prevent OpenAI from becoming a full-on profit company. And I think he recently just said he will withdraw his $97.4 billion takeover for that. But my thoughts are real simple. He already has a tool that's better He leaked yesterday, I think, in a call with Dubai, that his new Grok 3 is better than anything that exists out there, and it's going to get better too. Remember, they have the biggest Colossus compute center, the most H100s. They're buying more. They can't be caught. Again, it's another moat in the space of AI, unless, of course, you feel DeepSeek can do better. But I think it's all just a ploy. It's all poker and 4D chess.
Yeah, the DeepSeek stuff. I mean, I could talk hours about that. It was awful in terms of, again, what it did to the markets. But you're right. The moats are there, and the moats are very, very difficult to overcome. It's going to take people a couple of years to figure out how he brings these sites up so quickly for compute, how he gets all these GPUs to be coherent. It's going to take people a series of time, and while they're in the process of figuring it out, he's on to the next thing. He's on trying to get a 200,000 unit cluster up, or 300,000. So that's the wheel that we're in right now. And his philosophy is to outrun and out innovate folks. It may not always be perfectly on time. That's why when you see these, like the Robotaxi announcement and Optimus, there could be a 3 to 6 month guard band, I would call, around these things happening. And I think investors and people that follow the company should understand that. Why? Because when you're predicting schedules, and I've had to do this, I've had to go and commit to boards, commit to the biggest telecom operators in the world the day of a launch. And what I would always couch it with is we would look at how much are we doing in the product that's never been done before, and what it does in terms of, instability, uncertainty with the date. And you can't give them a long song and dance. Ultimately, you have to give them a date. But when you're doing these things, you just have to understand that there could be some uncertainty. But in general, what Tesla has done is, since October, they've stepped up to the mic multiple times, analyst conferences, multiple consecutive earnings calls, one-on-ones with Elon. And all they've done is they've actually reaffirmed and pulled dates in. And then if you were to go scrape the web on V13 and say, like, how is it performing? The general sentiment has moved massively positive, and it's from people that are much, much further outside of the Tesla daily sphere, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly interesting at this moment in time, right? Because just like you're saying, and we'll go through it, but the Robotaxi launch is on track. You got these new Model Ys that have come out and taken the market by storm, by looks like it, that the sales is through the roof. And then now we're seeing news that the Model Ys are going to be delivered sooner than their stated May. We're actually seeing Model Ys in the parking lots of multiple gigafactories, Fremont, Texas. We're seeing it all over the place now. So all of these is moving forward, but stock is falling because of a couple issues. I think we talked about it, probably multiple issues. But number one is the OpenAI concern, whether or not he's going to sell. And then, of course, number two is the Doge, whether or not he's spending too much time there. And then the political things. Both seem to be, I guess, the three of us think those are nothing burgers, especially now with the OpenAI, as you just said. I just want to reiterate it, that it came out this morning that Elon's lawyer said that they'll withdraw the bid if ChatGPT Maker stays nonprofit. It's more like the way you said it, James, right? It's more of his positioning that he's going to do the 97 billion.
Yeah.
A poison pill.
Yep.
Yeah. That he will offer this. Now, what's his name? Sam Altman will need to fork up more than the 40 billion that he thought the nonprofit's worth. And 97 billion is right in the middle between what is the value that it should be at, and for 40 billion, and he kind of just set a mark to it. So anyways, so we think that these are nothing, but the people, I guess it's like almost like we're in this position where there's people who are in the know of what actually matters, business and product versus this, and getting confused.
I always say if everybody was clever, we'd be poor. So we need, I'm not saying we're clever, of course, Jeff is, and you guys are, but not, it's just funny. But I do want to talk about one thing about FSE that I have noticed. And I used to race motorbikes when I was much younger. And there's ways of kind of how you hit the apex, how you balance your brakes front and back and hit the corner properly, and then how you accelerate out of it. I will tell you, I do some mountain pass driving in the snow and things like that. I am completely blown away as to how the Cybertruck sees the lines in the road when they're covered in snow, first of all,
Mhm.
and how it knows how fast it can go into a corner and how fast it can come out and what line to choose. Literally, it does it as good as me, sometimes better, and it's actually shattered my confidence in driving completely. This is
Mhm.
something that only people that have gone around corners in motorbikes understand. It does it. It is far cleverer than you actually realize. Jeff, you know
Yeah.
what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, I've said this recently. Tesla's doing two things. Is there's these two main tracks going. One is we'll get the disengagement rates down, critical, non-critical, get that down so people don't have to touch anything. But concurrently, the vehicle is just equipped with a massive amount of sensors, accelerometers, obviously all the cameras, the mics, and they understand the ride quality aspect of it well. So I believe the AI is not only optimizing for hardcore disengagements, but it's also concurrently optimizing for ride comfort. So you have these two vectors converging, and what you're going to get is you're going to get this chauffeur like professional 20, 30-year experienced chauffeur like driver, but it will drive the way you want it to drive. Anyway, you don't have to belabor it too long, but it's not only going to be the safest driving, but it may be the most comfortable feeling, accurate driving, and that's going to help on wear and tear. So you're going to talk about longevity of the vehicle. You're going to talk about needing less repairs. All of these things kind of feed into each other. Then if the vehicle's driving perfectly and the car knows it's driving perfectly, well, then its probability of being in an accident's lower. It's going to know that and inform the sensors that drive insurance coverage. And now you're going to have that loop fulfilled, and now you're going to start bringing that bundle in. So it's a business model disruptor, but it's for many other reasons than people are thinking, and so many different industries are going to start, I think, coming together as a result. I mean, still a lot of things have to happen, but you've seen now if you've been on 12.1, 12.3.5, and now you've been on 13.1 through now we're on 2.7, you've seen the relative improvement, and you know that the increased compute, their engineering capability, and the amount of data is actually it's scaling.
Yep.
I want to ask you guys. I mean, okay, let's get past this, right? We talked about the stock swings. We talked about how some people can see something that others are not seeing. The most important thing it looks like is going to be the Robotaxi launch. Are we being blind, right? Are we as Tesla investors, the three of us bulls, we're all so bullish, we're just not seeing something? We are experiencing, I'm driving FSD 13 as well, and I've got stories to tell you of what happened on Sunday. 8 hours full on driving multiple cities, multiple countries, by the way, Canada and Vancouver, Canada and US, flawless. I've been driving it clear. What happened to me was I needed to clear the front camera underneath the windshield. I brought in Tesla service, they cleaned it. And since then, no more, sun glare issues, no more self-disengagements. So we're experiencing it. We are hearing that they're coming forward. We're seeing all these signs, right? We're seeing the app. We're seeing inventions like the self-cleaning cameras of the side repeaters. They got the front camera now for the Model Y. Things are being put in place for a successful Robotaxi launch. And yet, people are saying BYD just announced that they've got God's Eye A, B, and C for their premium cars, all the way up to low-end cars of $13,000 US cars are going to be equipped with cameras. That's going to be able to both to highway and city. They've solved Robotaxi. Forget Tesla. Theirs are better. Huawei, there was this one demo on YouTube. Oh my God, they've got the best FSD, better than Tesla. Uber comes out and says, we're going to be able to do all, no, we're not going to be autonomous, but we're going to be the marketplace, and there will be a competitive market. There's going to be everybody's. Famously, we know one analyst that's in our Tesla community that keeps saying that as soon as Tesla solves FSD and offers Robotaxi, in 3 months, everybody's going to be able to do it. His point being that it's copied. Everybody will just copy it. Are we wrong? Is something here amiss? What are we missing?
I'll start. I mean, and maybe James can layer in. Like I said, you should have a healthy skepticism for the dates, and not that they're off by years, but there could be a couple of months of guard band because Tesla's doing things it's never done before. But to think that things are kind of a cut and paste. It's so far removed in terms of how products are made and the innovation that's gone on here, that this may be one of the things that's actually the most difficult to actually copy. I can't think of something that's more intertwined in terms of the cloud or the data center, the car and how it's designed, and then this self-driving computer. And I think what people need to understand is you have to replicate two fundamental things. One is you'd have to replicate the engineering so it actually works. The second thing you'd have to replicate is the business model. And the business model may take longer to replicate than the actual tech itself. What do I mean? Tesla's built a vertically integrated stack from end to end, from the silicon layer to all the way to how the car is cleaned. The Robotaxi is cleaned. It's a vertically integrated stack. Others have to farm that out to companies that all have different priorities. So the dates, the schedules, the speed at which they can move, the priorities are all jumbled. And then as you're farming it out, what are you doing? You're paying somebody a margin to do the work and return it back to you. But if you could do it yourself in the same region, you're hiring the same people, you could not have to pay yourself that margin. And therefore, these things stack. These things are complex. So to say that it's copied, to say that these things, yes, there will be other brands that have various levels of performance of self-driving. I don't doubt that happening. What I do doubt is when, and I doubt the business model. And Tesla does not need 100% market share. And I think this is where these are like bulls and bears like talking past each other. And there's some people that come on X and just want to just put people in buckets and say, everybody's 100%. You don't have to do that. This is a nuanced conversation. There's a business model and there's tech. The tech is extremely difficult to quote unquote copy, extremely difficult. And there's a data advantage, there's a compute advantage, there's an engineering advantage, and there's a fleet size advantage that Tesla has. And then the business model, I think, is actually more difficult and has more years behind it in terms of the ability to copy what Tesla is doing. You can't just say, I'm going to go vertically integrate. You actually have to have the chops to go in and engineer a solution that would be cheaper and more effective than any other existing option out there. I'll pause there. It's the business model and the tech. You're not copying one thing.
Can you just quickly address the BYD thing? I know you've told me before, but maybe this audience, what you're thinking about, is BYD a competitor?
I mean, BYD is layering in their own ADAS system. So BYD does make a lot of these components themselves, by the way. BYD should get credit, okay? I do tend to go on kind of negative at times, but I mean, they're highly vertically integrated. Their batteries, their blade battery, their cells, they're highly, and they make multiple components themselves that go in their vehicles. But what they did here is they installed tiered versions of hardware, ADAS, and they haven't even, they're going to roll it out in the future. I mean, Tesla's been installing various versions of ADAS for 10 years or more, and you can go back 8 years or more, you can still get software upgrades on what Tesla's putting in. I just think what they're doing, if they have around 40 EV models, and they do, by the way, this is verifiable, and you're going to start putting 3 different tiers of ADAS across 40 models, I think you're creating, in my opinion, you're creating a configuration management nightmare, because even those 3 ADAS models are going to have to be up-revved hardware-wise, and they're going to need improvements. So now you're going to have permutations, and it's going to get exponential in terms of the complexity. What if each one of those 3 levels has 2 or 3 or so different hardware changes that are needed? Now you're going to have 3 versions of each of the 3 versions. It's not out of the realm of possibility, and it probably will happen. So I think they've released various versions of ADAS. The other thing I'd be careful is just be careful when you watch a YouTube video of anybody. By the way, even people in a Tesla, there's a big difference between what can be done in a video and the editing and everything involved. And by the way, you don't even know if somebody's teleoperating some of these things in the background. Just be careful. There's a big difference between what Tesla has right now, which are hundreds of thousands of people attesting to the performance and the improvement, you do not have hundreds of thousands of consumers talking about any other self-driving solution. Again, you have Waymo, but that is confined cities, Robotaxi, so forth only. That's not something I can go write a check for and buy and park it in my driveway. So long story short, it's ADAS, and they have a lot of software work to do. 2 years ago, the CEO was on the record saying, we don't think self-driving is a thing.
Yeah,
we're not going to even work on it. And then they did a complete 180. They've hired a 5,000 person team. That's going to take time to ramp. By the way, I'll layer in the Apple conversation of them getting potentially into various forms of humanoids and robots. Okay, if they're investigating it right now, well, then you got to make prototypes. Then you got to do proof of concept. You've got years ahead of you before you get to anywhere close to what you're seeing from Tesla today. It's true. This is facts. This isn't like hating on everybody else and like everything's perfect. By the way, I'm the last person to say that everything that happened right now at Tesla is perfect, but these are the facts regarding what was announced and where they're at relative to where Tesla's at.
Yeah, I could throw 100 points at this one, and I'll start with the competition are coming. We've heard that for 10 years now. Second, Jeff is dead right. They're throwing hardware at the problem, but really it's a software issue. And we've seen time and time again. I always go back to the case. Guess how many coders it took to build Gmail for Google? One guy. One person did it. Throwing 5,000 developers at a problem does not solve the problem. We saw that with Volkswagen as well, and their skunk works. And it takes actually like look at SEAL Team 6 is always referred to how they operate. 6 specialists is optimal, not 5,000. The other problem is, if you look at how the vision that Tesla had 7-8 years ago to solve the FSD problem by placing cameras, by recording data, by uploading data, by having the telco infrastructure in the car to do all that, neural nets, vision only. This is what BYD are doing is a very different approach, and they're not going to be able to solve it. And then I hear people saying, well, LiDAR, you need LiDAR. No, LiDAR gets blinded. If you're in snow or a leaf hits your camera, game over. Fog, it doesn't work. So all of these things need to be taken into account. And how many miles is it? Is it 3 billion miles under FSD driven in the last how many months?
There's a huge advantage. But now you're going to have
the chart like this.
Advantage.
Yeah. One thing that people keep sending me notes is, have you seen the Huawei video that's on YouTube by Out of Spec? He had a guy in China, German guy, take one of Huawei's cars and drive it around and, see how perfect it was. And he kept saying, this is so much better than FSD. It's perfect. Parking lot to parking lot is very impressive. And like Jeff was saying, it's a demo of one person taking the car. We have thousands of those FSD demos all the time. Not saying Huawei is not progress. In fact, we agree, right, Jeff, that Huawei is probably the leader. Next to Baidu, right? The two of them are leading in China for their version of FSD. But when you look deeper into Huawei, and you'll find out that, they announced that they're moving to neural nets August of last year, so 6-7 months ago. So it's like these companies who are behind, seeing where Tesla is, and one by one, you start hearing companies. Xiaomi announced that they're going to go to, first of all, you want to hear them say, we're no longer going to do code. We're going to go to neural nets, which means that they need to have data, which means they need to have a supercomputer. They need to have the engineers to create the neural net model. And then they need to get out of LiDAR. Well, Huawei and BYD still sticking with LiDAR. Now, do they have to get out of LiDAR? Well, you don't have to, but it's like Elon was saying, when you're doing neural nets, you're actually confusing it with, you don't need the laser. You want the system to understand the world by context, real world. What is that? Is that a fire hydrant? All LiDAR can do is that there's something there. But you need the vision data to tell you, and then you figure out and learn that that's a fire hydrant, that's a curb, that's a tree, this is what's happening. And then you have intent of individuals. Is that pedestrian going to cross or not cross? Is this, construction waving or not waving to let you go through? all of these things can only be solved through a smart system like a neural net. And so they just started in August. And now you got to say, are they really ahead? We'll see, right? I'm not going to discount them, but I'll say, well, don't be fooled to think that they're already beaten Tesla when they just moved to neural nets in August. That's one example, right?
Yeah, these things take years in some cases to do. And it's not to say that something can't come along and be disruptive, but there's so many components that are needed to make this system. You need the compute, you need the engineering horsepower, and then you need the inference side compute on the vehicle. You need data. You need all these things. And Tesla started down this path early enough and went all in when others were still trying to decide what sensor suite to put in and how to get, and they just don't have the share of vehicles and the amount of data. Now, BYD says, well, we have a lot of vehicles on the road. We make a lot of cars, and now we're capturing a lot of data. Then you get into the data quality question, because all the data from Teslas wasn't good, right? From every year. I think the data quality question is also comes into play. So I think what you're going to see is you're going to see Tesla get to some endpoint, and then they're going to continue to make this progress, and there'll be a rollout, it'll be Robotaxi and so forth. But what you're going to see in the media is you're going to see kind of these phantom things about, BYD's got cars with self-driving hardware and they're doing something. You're just going to see these announcements happening, and it's almost like here's the next, like the announcements we saw from 2016 to like 2020, I don't know, 3, about here's the next Tesla killer chunk of hardware vehicle. You're going to see those same kind of hardware announcements, but they're going to be for somebody's trying to do self-driving or somebody does a demo video, because they are going to catch up and they are going to achieve these milestones. But the scale that Tesla will be able to flip on with a switch is pretty enormous. Now, there are roadblocks in front of all these things. You've got regulatory bodies to deal with. You need a federal regulatory framework that has to be created in the US. This is why one of the reasons they're starting city by city and state by state. You still need that framework. And then you still have regulator issues all over the world. We have a data issue in China to work through. So it's not like it's free and clear, everything's going to happen perfectly, but it's kind of a culmination of a lot of things that have happened. And like there's a tremendous lead in terms of what Tesla has. And the problem is the media, and I would say casual investors who don't have the time or bandwidth to go and investigate all this, it's hard for them to quantify what that lead really is, and especially when you have the media article of the day coming out too.
Okay, I'm going to share a couple things, and then you guys can react to this. Number one is, right, LiDAR. When you hear that companies like BYD, Huawei have LiDAR, that means that they have to go city by city, right, block by block, map everything very, very clearly. Takes them a lot longer. Meanwhile, Tesla is already launched in Mexico. And they launched in Mexico and Puerto Rico, the territory of Puerto Rico. There's videos of these guys all over Mexico using Tesla's FSD and driving it there. This is just an example of FSD can be taken anywhere, really, and used just out of the box. And this is a different country, right? So how different is this? Right? Yeah, different language, different signs, some different roads quality, different lane markings. All that is different, but it's working. And then when you were talking about regulatory approval for federal, I wanted to hear what you guys thought about this. Yesterday, Trump admin basically announced that they're going to nominate NHTSA, for the new NHTSA chief, which is the National Highway Transportation chief. This guy comes from Apple. So at first it sounds great because he comes from Apple. But it looks like that, it's a reasonable guess, and he worked on policy issues relating to Apple's discontinued autonomous car project. So he looks like that. But his previous job was he lobbied for auto dealerships. And Rohan Patel, who worked at Tesla, said that he knows this guy, and he previously worked for the Franchise Auto Dealers of California, fighting Tesla on a regular basis. Although he says he seemed like a generally solid guy when interacting at NHTSA. Are you thinking that's a good move, right? I wouldn't imagine that Trump admin with Elon's input, be able to put in somebody who would be fighting Tesla?
Well, I think dealerships are dead. I think people know that channel will shrivel up and die over the next 5 to 10 years. It makes no sense. And it also cripples the very tight margins that car companies have to deal with as well. Adding in that extra layer of complexity. We always go back to Occam's razor. So dealerships will go away. And, sometimes people, they lobby because they get paid to lobby. It's the grift. So maybe there were financial incentives, as Warren Buffett said, show me the incentive, etc. But I think it's good that somebody that understands technology is coming there into the role. That's a positive.
Yeah, I think you want somebody who's worked in tech, worked at a big tech company, because it's not going to be a traditional problem to solve and to work with. So you need, like, what is kind of that Silicon Valley, a little bit of that tech mindset, whether it's Silicon Valley or other areas, but tech mindset, but also it looks like he has an auto background as well. I think it's fine. Tesla ultimately has to put the numbers up, and they've got to show that they've got a meaningfully safer solution out there. And I was so encouraged when I saw the Doge dashboards being released last night, and the website and the real-time information. And I'm not saying like now is the time to do it with FSD, but when it's the right time to do it for FSD, that having that transparent information out there. I know they're releasing information quarterly, but just to shut people up. Like, regular cars get in car accidents. Teslas on FSD, there will be accidents too. They'll be at fault of the other driver. Who knows? There will be some at fault from Tesla as they continue to improve this system. The point is the rate. That is the key. And are people meaningfully safer in a car on FSD? So yeah, the regulator's fine. It's not like it's this last person. I think the start of the previous administration that was literally like anti-Tesla, anti-everything. So this is like we're taking baby steps forward. So I think it's fine. I think Tesla, just has to keep focused on their Robotaxi deployment.
Yeah, I'll make a prediction. I think that Tesla will announce and show you the data. I'll just, to give myself some time, I'll say 6 months from now. Within 6 months from now, they will release that data. And the reason I'm feeling confident about that is, like, if you're looking at miles between critical disengagements, I think we're already at safer than a human. Now, there is these levels, right? Let me rephrase that. I think we're at one critical disengagement every 10,000 miles. I think that's where we're already at today, or at least the next release that they're looking at. So that's not quite yet safer than a human, which we'll get to by June. So I think that within 6 months from now, we will get to that. This is all dependent on whether or not Tesla actually increases the number of compute. I think I've been repeating this a few times. I think the biggest thing about the earnings call that I was most concerned about, I wouldn't say concerned, just curious about, was they did not show their plans for compute. They did say that they're going to spend the same amount of $10 to $12 billion that they spent last year buying more compute, but they didn't show us that table that we're at 50,000 H100 equivalents today, and by this month, by the end of this year, 2025, we will have 100,000. If that happens and they get to 100,000, 150,000 H100 equivalents, at that point, I don't have any concerns or belief, or I would have higher confidence that they will get to safer than a human. Anyways, I do think that they'll start releasing it. I think that the numbers are pretty compelling at this point. Even if they're not yet safer than human, they just need to show that they're about to become safer than human. So I would say 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I mean, we can all have our own guesses. I think it's fine. I think you set the priorities right, Herbert. It's just, we don't have data. We need data. And in the absence of no data, then there's bad data that's out there right now. So I'm not saying it's time for Tesla to do it, but at some point they will have to be unbelievably transparent, because the other side of this argument, I'm not saying they're not transparent, by the way, but they're talking about relative improvement, and they're going to need to show the actual data. But because the other side of this is so vicious in terms of, like, how they make every accident goes viral. There's no context around everything. It goes back to my original, the media is a cesspool, because it is. And ultimately, and there's so many opposing forces, by the way, there will be a lot of opposing forces to EV advancement to autonomous advancement and so forth. So the data is going to have to rule. So I was really encouraged what I saw them doing with Doge, and I'd love to see that applied. And I think, yeah, you're right. Probably later part of this year makes sense.
Okay. I think we spent a lot of time on Robotaxi. That is the most important thing, whether it's on track. We did hear Elon say just very recently that we're still on track for a paid Robotaxi ride-hailing service happening in June in multiple cities by the end of this year. But it's Elon saying it. But of course, in the earnings call, we did hear other people like Ashok as well recommending. And then we had Franz in a Jay Leno interview just a few days ago. He said that there's going to be cybercabs in June. So I think the confidence level that we have that it's going to release in June is still on track. What about the new models, the new Tesla models? We've been hearing now that there's Tesla Model Y is actually being released, or people who put an order for it were told that they were going to get it in May, but now we're starting to see every factory have parking lots, and you're now seeing the revised Model Ys there. So it sounds like that might be on track. What do you guys think about whether or not the new affordable models are on track? We have no idea at this point, do we?
Yeah, I definitely think they are. In fact, there's a couple of things just for the audience. If you can share the slide on the next one real fast. We have a couple of things. We got the Model 2, the V2. That's going to take a little bit longer, but the 2.5, they mentioned it was going to be a 25K car. It'll be a sub $30,000 car. That's coming too with a lot of new enhanced features. They're packing more into a vehicle than any other car company on the planet can. And unboxed, I think, from what I understand, maybe the Cybercab will be unboxed and then printed at scale pretty fast. But this is interesting. This is breaking news from Joe Tegmeyer. They have this Model Y covered up. And my gut, maybe others believe this could be the new 7-seater.
Or the performance, right?
Yeah, or a sport version. We're not sure. Yeah. So, but the models don't matter. You can take this off. What matters is the move to autonomy. And again, when it kind of alarmed the market last year, remember early last year when Elon said, we're going doubling down, tripling down, 10xing down on autonomy, cybercabs, that's the way to go. And we see that now. There was a very interesting study released of how demographics have changed, how the amount of people buying cars have changed, how I think you guys even mentioned the crash rates of cars is reducing the scrap rates. So cars are lasting longer on the roads, better quality. So the whole car industry itself is drying up. That whole world is going to flip to autonomous vehicles taking you from A to B. You might have a car at home, but you may never use it. Jeff?
Yeah. First off, I do think the new vehicles are on track, and I think the cybercabs are on track. And I think there was some interest, with the Franz announcement on the Jay Leno show of cybercabs being part of these Robotaxi in June. And what I think that is I think it's just part of the development process where Tesla's going to have more and more vehicles available. And since they're not selling them to consumers, they're selling the ride. They're not selling the vehicle. The vehicle's under Tesla's care, that they can start layering these in. It's actually a really good way to get feedback and to also to road test vehicles and to get a lot of data. Of course, you want to road test them with your own employees and get data. But the next thing you'd like to do is, if you're doing a real controlled quality introduction, is you'd want to get, smaller beta groups of just normal people that don't work at the company that can give you a bit of unbiased feedback. By the way, there's implicit bias if you've been in the development of a program the whole time and then you're at the end and you're trying to user test it. There's a lot of implicit bias. Some people are very good at separating it and put it to the side. I always like to think that I was good at doing that, but you really want people that have never seen the thing before, that are normal consumers, that have normal feedback to test it. So I think the vehicles are on track, but you can be a little bit critical. It's okay to be a little bit critical here of Tesla as well. And I'll couch it as this. The 3 to the Y launch was improvement. Like the Model 3 launch was, launch China and Europe, and then 6 months later, you wouldn't even see a North America vehicle. So now we've consolidated that and we've condensed that, and that should be celebrated. Like, that's year-on-year progress. But ultimately with Tesla, and I know Tesla on the inside knows this, that they had a product running at about 25,000 units a week in the old Model Y, and they need to shrink that gap when they're introducing new products and they're sunsetting old ones. You want to shrink the number of weeks where you're not at your peak run rate and you're not at your peak output. So how many weeks is it going to take Tesla to get the new version to 25? Or does it? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe with the newer vehicles, it only gets to 20. The point is you want to shrink that time you're not at peak run rate, because if you're not at peak run rate, you're not at peak utilization. If you're not at peak utilization, you're not absorbing all the fixed costs. So I think the transition's better. I applaud Tesla, by the way, for crushing the channel and getting it down very close to zero. A lot of people misunderstood that. They thought that we have a January sales problem because the company said, hey, the new Model Y is on track. I got to get this inventory. If I have obsolescence in the channel, one of the things that will destroy your balance sheet and destroy your unit economics is having something called excess and obsolescence. It kills product companies if they don't transition properly and get rid of the old stuff. So I think they're the best in the industry at doing this, by the way. I applaud them for what they did there. I applaud the channel inventory, but man, we can't have this massive gap. Like, when is the new Model Y going to be up at that rate again, would be my question.
Exactly. And can you talk to that? Because there's so much FUD out there regarding the market and its impact on the stock price. People saying, oh, EV trends are slowing, etc. Tesla sales are down. But the data that I see, I'll talk about the kind of quick round the world. China remains the largest market with the most robust growth still. Model Y is selling like hotcakes there. Europe has slowed down, like Germany and Italy, but they also are in recession. And also it takes time to ramp the Model Y in those markets. US growth has slowed, but again, there's a lot of uncertainties around EV tax credits and things like that. And we have that demolition of the channel inventory that you mentioned. But emerging markets are on the ramp, like Brazil, India, Thailand are picking up a lot. But can you explain how the changeover from the new Model Y, or from the old to the new, it takes time to ramp, and that will impact sales, especially since there was no inventory available? This is what people miss.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you're to be critical a bit, you're supposed to do both. Like, you're supposed to land the plane, and you're not supposed to, so you have to take the inventory down, the old one. You have to get the new one should have been up at rate, and I know we're happy about what we're seeing in the Austin lots, and it's great. This is much better than Model 3. Like, you can't, some of these problems you can't solve in one cycle or 1 year. It takes a couple of years to do. So I applaud the progress. It's just, we should have tens of thousands of Model Ys ready to go out in each region. And it should be, you want to, bottom line, it's not an emotional thing. It's just the number of weeks that we're not at 25K output is, you want to count the number of weeks. Like, that was a long time on Model 3. And it looks like they're crunching it on peak run rate. It looks like they're consolidating it on the Model Y. You want to keep doing that. And what you want to do is, as you start introducing new vehicles, you want to just keep expanding the channel. Right now, what we've done is we have this accordion where we come in and collapse the channel and we get everything out, and that's fine from an obsolescence perspective, but now we're not selling anything. So they got to do both. Like I said, it's better than the Model 3, but we can continue to do better. Looks like the reviews on the Model Y are like universally like, this thing's going to be a home run. So it's just like, how do I make more of them?
I'm glad that we have you here. You're the expert at the executive level, supply chain, manufacturing, factories, product, global launch.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to sound stupid when I say this, Jeff.
Yeah,
I don't know more than Tesla.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds stupid, but Jeff, this new Model Y is a brand new car. It's not the same as the old Model Y. It's like over 50% brand new supply chain. You know this better. So It's not like some companies take a car and then they replace it with a new version, but all they've done is, changed a few slight things to it, right? And call it the 2027 model. This is a brand new car. Every part of it has been changed and new features. So that's a whole new supply chain.
Yes. Yeah. And that takes time. And like I said, you got to be able to do both. But I will say, there's not anything in here that's like brand new technology, never been done before in the
Right.
world.
They did not put forward. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, you're right. That you're talking about thousands of parts. These are thousands of trains that have to be aligned, where the tooling schedule has to come down, then it has to re-ramp up. So there's a lot involved. So anyway, I'm hopeful that we're gonna have a big drop off. I think people watching the show, I mean, I think there's gonna be a huge drop off in deliveries in Q1, and typically you have seasonality in Q1. BYD's deliveries in January, huge drop off. Companies have seasonality in January. I would, by the way, I would take the 12 days of inventory leaving over getting to 515,000 in Q4. I would take the 12. If you gave me the choices and I was in the captain's chair, I would take the 12 days of inventory, because from a balance sheet perspective, they're going to be in a cash perspective, they're going to be in a much better. Nobody's going to remember 515 or 506 or 495. 90 days from now, nobody's even remember that.
So question for you, Jeff.
The media will remind us, but
we have the new Model Y introduced in early part of January. We're here in middle of February. We're seeing this ramp up of this. All the factories of Tesla is working on this. In the meantime, they're supposed to release a new model. And I think our rumors that we're hearing is May, February, March, April, May. It's supposed to come in the first, in the first half of this year. They reiterated that. What's your thinking of how would this all kind of, could it come sooner? Is it going to come much later?
Like I said, with these things, there could be a couple months here or there. And what people define as a launch are different things, right? You can have a couple hundred cars and people call it a launch, or the website reveals a launch, or whatever. What I hope is happening here is we don't want dribbles and drabs of this coming out, because it would really cause problems, I think, for the Model Y and the Model 3. What we want is, you have the Model Y out there at a price point, you have the Model 3 out there at a price point, and they serve different kinds of needs. But you have it out there at these price points. What I hope is these new lower cost vehicles just come in, and one day we turn on the website and all of a sudden you get a post from Sawyer that says, oh, guess what? The new models are loaded in the website and they're available for order. That would be the best thing for the Model Y and the 3 and their total business. But if it starts with, like, if it's revealed and then there's no supply, well, then you're going to have, it's not so much an Osborne, you're just going to freeze your own channel up, and it would cause problems. And by the way, Tesla knows this. Like, this is not telling. I just hope it's more of a flip the light switch on, and there's many thousands of these things built and ready to go. So I think if you're hearing rumors of May, that's probably some point of production, right? Maybe start.
Sounds right, doesn't it? Though that's what I'm saying. January, February, Model Y, maybe May, new model.
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about the other elephants in the room too. If we can pop this up, because this ties into, you heard about the armored vehicle deal, 400 million. Plus, this was done under the Biden administration. This has nothing to do with Trump and Elon Musk. I want to make that very clear. Plus, this contract also includes a $40 million deal for armored X7 BMWs as well. So it's not just Tesla, although Tesla have the lion's share of it, which would be big. So maybe over-engineering a bulletproof Cybertruck makes sense after all. But this brings people to the question is, Musk's involvement with the government, what's going on here? He was on a video as well earlier today. If we go to this one real quick, and you can see how the reach is happening. Dubai Loop will be built by Elon using the Boring Company. They're going to build a big underground thing, and they spoke about that as well, which is stunning. But people are concerned that Elon is too tight with the US government, but they have been for a long time with all his companies. So the question is, what do you say to people that have EDS, TDS, especially in other parts of the world, like Germany right now? It's incredible. If you mention anything, people are up in arms about this company, this guy, etc. What would you guys advise to people who in this realm right now?
Yeah, so I have a opinion on this, a pretty strong one, about not necessarily about Cybertrucks or vehicles or loops, but about the bot. I think that the government of the United States, the US government, has to support Tesla because they are the leader in creating the humanoid bots. They should support all humanoid bot companies that are based in the US. That you want them to support this. You've already heard the Chinese government come out and say that we are going to be the leader in humanoid bots by 2027, and that we're going to heavily invest in it till we master this market. This is a what is it? A risk, national risk, and you need to invest in it. And do not, no matter what you think about Elon or your concerns about what he's doing with Doge, the bot is something you cannot oversee. It'd be a shame if other countries develop humanoid bots. It's economic warfare, number one, right? Their businesses will automatically become that much better in terms of producing products, much more margin, be competitive globally. But then, of course, it can be used militarily. So this idea of this government is buying Tesla's products, oh no, and we're using it for military. There's a concern about humanoid bots being used for military, but only if you can get this global, armistice, right? Like the nuclear war thing. But like what happened with nukes, you have to have two superpowers that are like, okay, you can't let one take over. So you've got to invest just as much as the other countries are.
Yeah, I think Elon is very anti-war as well. So he would never enable Optimus as a war machine. And anyway, war has transitioned to a different type of technology altogether. But this actually just came in as well today, where Elon has upset the left greatly, so much so they really want to fight back with weapons to this bar fight, which to me is code for we want him killed, we want him taken out. And this brings up the key man risk analysis, which is deeply concerning. What Doge is uncovering right now is literally shaking up decades of grift in politics, not just in the US, but all over the world. As I say, you'll never see a poor politician. This is alarming. I don't know if you guys saw this one.
Well, this guy's a clown, and there's a lot of clowns on either side. Elon's security is still of utmost priority. I totally agree with that. And that guy's a clown. Nobody should listen to him. And Herbert, but I think it's appropriate, Jane, for you to kind of show the tenor of like what the other side is, or not the other side, I should say, what one side is saying. Freudian slip. But I think Herbert was spot on in terms of this kind of being almost an arms race. And what I would say to Tesla investors and people that follow the company, and this concern about Musk and his proximity to the government, is you don't have autonomy, you don't have humanoid robots if Elon is not close with the government working on the priorities, the framework, the deregulation, which we don't talk about a lot, and then the appropriate regulatory framework or overlay that has to go in place to enable these things and do it safely. I don't think you have them. I think Tesla could innovate and do things all day and all night. And this is one thing you've heard Elon say for years. When he talks about a date on autonomy, or he talks about a date with any of these things that don't exist before, he says subject to regulatory approval. What does he say all the time? It's subject to what regulators are doing. So if you don't have Elon going in and taking a bit of the, of the wheel on this, and again, doing it in a collaborative, open, transparent way, I don't think you unlock what the real value of the Tesla business is. I don't think it ever gets unlocked. So I think this had to have happened.
And I think as well, what kind of dovetails into what Herbert was saying too, and what you, Jeff, I believe, obviously we know autonomy and bots will be a huge driver of GDP growth. Okay. If you do not have them, you are toast. China, and Herbert, you know this better than anybody. How many bot makers are there now in China? 30. And they're doing a half marathon, and they got 104 in one area doing sewing and cooking and folding of clothes and everything else. It is insane. If you're not part of it and you're not competitive, or at least the best, you're going to fall behind. So I fear very much for other economies that don't even have a skin in the game. Second, I think having AI and bots and autonomy is of utmost importance to national security. I think the current government leadership realizes that. Am I stretching here?
No, I mean, there's an economic security as national security.
Exactly.
And so, I don't think there's any stretching at all. I do get concerned. I will be very critical. Again, I don't want to get too far into politics, but I get concerned that we do have an administration that likes to hold on to the past a little bit too much. And, we see it with some of the stuff with energy. We got to be careful here. And this is, by the way, this has spanned multiple administrations. I can go all the way back to the smartphone. I can go back even earlier than that. We missed and we handed over. We handed over mobile phone industry to China. We handed it to them on a silver plate. We handed over the television industry, these major industries they're huge. You can talk about it, they're huge. And then we handed over, we've handed over EV right now. China is the leader in EV. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
So as humanoids are approaching and as autonomy is approaching and as AI is approaching in general, we can't hand that over. And so I go back to try to disarm this conversation, because you have Tesla investors just want to get on one side of the political argument versus another. You don't unlock Tesla's business potential without Elon having some involvement, not only with the United States, but actually somewhat globally to deregulate. Otherwise, these things just don't happen.
I agree. There is
Okay.
there is the one other concern that people have in mind, and hopefully, Jeff, you can debunk this. There's so much talk about tariffs. In fact, there was a warning that new tariffs will be released today at 12 noon, I think. I saw some posts
right
out
now.
there. Yeah. The thing is, if, say, we just talk Canada and Mexico, forget the rest of the world, if 25% tariffs were supposed to be imposed on them, that would kill the U.S. auto industry overnight. Not Tesla, but the U.S. auto industry. It can never happen. Again, this is another example of chess, brinkmanship, negotiations. This is the art of the deal. So people are still alarmed by that. And I know we've debunked it ourselves many times. But Jeff, Herbert, can you talk to that real quick? How this tariff game is just a game?
Yeah, and I submitted a chart too. I don't know if we have time to put it up, but I will be critical again. So first off, the president needs autonomy. I'll go in multiple directions and try to just bring this to a point. For years, and I've done distribution in 150 countries, you would be floored if you saw the tariff regime that was put on the United States. This is one of the reasons we lost all of our manufacturing. We just had to ship everything abroad and build it in more of a globalized supply chain because of how we were being tariffed. And then these free trade agreements were formed, and then these bands of countries came together where you can trade between them. But in the U.S. was literally disadvantaged on the outside of this. If you saw the amount of tariffs that were put on the U.S. that are on today that are not reciprocal, it would blow your mind. So it's great to be a free trader. I get it. But we've been in a bit of a disadvantaged position for a long period of time. And it's not due to one president or another. It's due to many. It's just due to how we globalized supply chain over the last 2 decades. But now, fast forwarding to today, we can't do what we're doing right now in the media. And I say in the media, I'm talking about the White House and the media together. This is first off, the 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada, if it's part of a negotiation, fine. It can't last long. It can't be extended. These companies right now are building up inventory. They're doing all kinds of pricing moves between layers of the supply chain. You're going to cause a major problem where you're going to have all this inventory built up. Let's say it's, we were just kidding. We're not going to do the tariffs. We've made USMCA number 2. Well, great. You're on the other side of this. We're going to have shitloads of inventory laying everywhere. You're going to have to shut down factories for periods of time till you burn off that inventory. You're going to have to do price protection on that inventory. There a little bit of economic calamity is being created right now. Even though the tariffs aren't on, it's really causing a lot of problems, I would say. Now, if the tariffs go on, I don't know why it took Jim Farley, 10 days to come out. I don't know why Mary Barr's, I would have been out in 24 hours. I wrote an article in 24 hours in a discussion of these tariffs. This will blow the biggest hole in the U.S. auto industry. People think putting tariffs on Mexico is just going to magically bring jobs over the next day in the U.S. The problem is the supply chains were built with USMCA, that construct, that framework in mind, where it was okay to set up trade and to set up manufacturing in those countries and locales. So by making a trade deal and making a framework, and then have everybody doing these multi-year build-outs of supply chain design, and then you want to upend it overnight, you're causing just literal calamity. So I think there's there's probably a different way to handle this. What I would do is I'm okay with the number 25%, but I'd say January 2026. And then you get the best of both worlds. You get the movement, first off, you get people trying to make a deal with you. You get the other countries trying to make a deal. But then you give your supply chains time and say, look, we're serious about this. You better start moving. Like, I want more of the manufacturing back. That's ultimately what we want. Even if the other country makes the deal, we still want more jobs and we want more of the manufacturing to be localized.
Yep. Good point. But a
So
little bit of breaking news.
So people say we're not critical of whatever Tesla is doing or whatever, we are, or whatever the administration's doing, we are. And I think there's a balanced approach. Let's get to the breaking news.
Yeah, Modi is meeting with Elon Musk as we speak.
Yeah. So that's actually in line with what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Because Tesla, the United States and China, or let's talk Tesla, Elon Musk, right? Elon is well positioned in China. Okay. He's absolutely revered in China, both at the government level and the consumers are loving the Tesla products, and they're the number one product out there. However, he needs to get FSD approved in China. And right now, he talked about it in the earnings call, right? He said that we're having troubles. We're not allowed to use our existing cars on China to take those data and those cameras and put into, and we're not even allowed to create a supercomputer in China because we're restricted to bring in NVIDIA chips. Now, is this Modi coming in? It's interesting that Modi's the one flying in to the US. Now, he's meeting a bunch of CEOs, so I'm not going to overread into what this might mean, but he's the one flying in. Now you have this, image of Modi speaking to Elon, and China's going to say, hey, we want to own the EV market. We're going global. We don't want you to help India create an EV market there or factories there. And so maybe it could be like used and say, hey, come on, give me something, China, and we'll build more Megapack factories in China. We'll build more factories there. I've been saying that I believe the third Megapack factory, unlike everyone else who thinks it's going to be in Germany, I think it's going to be in China. And yes, I know that they have a Shanghai Megapack factory. It's going to be twice the size of Lathrop. I still think that they need to give something back to China saying, hey, we're going to keep building Megapacks for you. We're going to keep building these for you. Give us something back. But I don't know. I don't like that Modi's here. I don't think that this is the right path for Tesla to build a factory in India right now.
No, but you need that.
Unless it's
lever,
Megapack. Unless it's a Megapack factory. But yes,
Tesla needs that. Tesla, as you described, Tesla needs that lever with China. This data situation on FSD, it's a problem, and I know Tesla's trying to be creative in trying to solve the problem, and they should continue to try to be creative. But I think the levers in the market access is needed. By the way, reciprocal tariffs, I will tell you this, they need to go on India, and they need to go on and maybe it's a set period of time in the future. But India has been an absolute disaster for American companies trying to do business there, and it really needs to come to an end. And I've set up manufacturing there, and the hoops that they make you jump through in terms of the tariff rates are not like, oh, you can. If you want to import, it's fine, but you just have to pay this small tariff. No, they're gigantic. They're gigantic, and they don't want to just set up assembly. They want you to set up the entire supply chain. So I applaud them, right? It's protectionism, but at the same time, that works when you have the ability to develop all this technology and you can self-sustain. But obviously with EV and obviously with AI, they're going to need some more help and support from the world. So they need to blow a hole in these tariffs. They need to be more, and then hopefully they just drop and they go away. That would be best case.
Now, one last comment. I'm very upset that the again, not political at all, because I think it's just U.S. government in general have not supported the EV industry. Look at China; they have hundreds of EV companies. Now, hundreds of them die, but that's how you get. That's how you get the best coming out. Hundreds of EV company. What do we have? Rivian, Cruise. We have a couple Zooks. We have few, but like less than 10 in your hand. And then you're not even supporting Tesla to create the electric vehicle. You've got to support EVs. This is one already in the EV market. Now the next game is Robotaxi, and it's bots, right, Jeff? We've been talking about this so much. These are the next games.
We can't lose bots.
God, we cannot lose bots.
We can't lose
AI.
We can't lose bots, and we can't lose AI. And the EV thing started 15, 18 years ago when we were not setting up the mineral supply chain, the extraction, the refining. We are getting killed even if we go find a bunch of rare earths on the refining capacity, that takes years to put in place. So this is a you're right, Herbert, it's not a political thing because it spans like so many different parties, so many different generations. And we can't let what happened with EV happen again with AI. And I do get concerned a bit. This is why the other reason I like Elon's proximity to government. And I like some of the people that have been put into the cabinet because it's a little bit more tech forward than it has been in the past. So let's hopefully they execute that way. By the way, I still think you're going to see a bunch of BS and noise. Repeal the green news scam, do this, do that. But what I think is coming behind it is your repeal. I'm using the words that they use, the green news scam. What will come behind the IRA, I think, is a Made in USA credit. I think they don't have the votes to just repeal all this because all the battery factories, 85% of them are built in Republican-red areas, so they don't have the votes. There's a letter with 14 Republican congressmen. There's only a 2-seat majority in Congress, and 14 Republican congressmen wrote a letter to the speaker in August saying, like, we support the IRA, we support all this manufacturing that's brought into our district. You can't undo this because of, for political talking points. So I think it's a repeal and replace, and they rebrand IRA with Made in the USA, and you will see battery storage done here. You will see, and you will see some protectionism around that too. I think you're going to see some issues with China imports of cells. So hang on to your hats. I think a lot of news is coming down the pipe.
Yeah, and energy storage business, again, that's $1 trillion business. It's ramping very fast, and China just going live. I mean, I think I have a slide on Lathrop somewhere. I forget which number it is. 17. Bear with me 1 second. 7, or can you turn the slides? Slide 17. There.
Okay. So you keep changing it.
We're both into control. But this is huge. 321 Tesla megapacks at Lathrop right now, sitting on the lot. Okay. Times 321 times $2 million a pop. And then 1,500 Powerwalls built in 24 hours in, where is that? I don't know where that factory is. It's somewhere in the US. But, these things sell for $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 each. And they're making 1,500 a day. And the demand is through the roof. You got to go on a waiting list to get them. I mean, this energy business is insane. Absolutely insane, especially with the AI revolution. It's just
to be really constructive and just the other side of that, to be careful for everybody. China has a huge card with LFP right now. Others are, so Korea's trying to bring up LFP, Japan's trying to bring up LFP, we're trying to bring up LFP. We're nowhere close to where China is. Now, you heard about the Tesla patent and you heard about everything, but that's a patent. It's got to be turned into a design. Then the design's got to be turned into a manufacturing solution. And then the CapEx needs to be ramped up. I wish one of the analysts would have asked this question on the call, but China has a huge card with LFP. If they turn off LFP to the world, they have a huge negotiating chip with that. It's going to take a couple of years for other countries in the US to catch up. So there is specific risk to Tesla, Lathrop manufacturing if that happens. So these tariff conversations back and forth, so far, Tesla's, even in the China rhetoric back and forth, Tesla's been carved out of a lot of this stuff. Even the auto one that went out supposedly on Monday from it was just for heavy duty vehicles. It wasn't even any of the EVs. Like Tesla can still, now there's still a VAT tax, right? There's still the existing tariff framework, but there wasn't anything new added to Tesla. I think this is just an opinion. I believe that Elon's good favor in China and what he's done there and his respect, I think Tesla is carved out of a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And I think they earned it. I also think Apple may be carved out of some things. We'll see. But I think in these negotiations, I think you're going to see this ramp up. But I also think you're going to see some carve outs because there's mutual dependency on these things. Well, we'll see. Never a dull moment.
No. Right now, luckily, China needs Tesla more than Tesla needs China.
And the US needs Tesla more than Tesla needs the US.
The US don't get it. That's the things. They're not
I think the new administration does. I honestly do. I give them a little bit more credit than the previous administration. How about that?
Well,
yeah.
So
anyway,
tax on EVs, but okay, let's move on. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to have these rogue groups, Herbert, on both sides doing these weird things, and hopefully they got to get to a bill here at some point. But you're going to have on both sides, you're going to see a lot of bizarre stuff. I agree with you.
All right. Oh, guys, this is the most powerful conversation I've had in such a long time. Really appreciate both of you. James from Invest Answers, killer analytics, always comes with data. Then you got Mr. Incredible.
Nobody calls me
Mr.
that
Incredible.
besides you.
I call you that. I'm the only one who calls you because, yeah, well.
I Googled Mr. Incredible. It's some type of movie cartoon character or something.
Come on, James. You don't know that? Yeah, take a look at him. He's Mr. Incredible.
I'm very sheltered from TV and movies.
Okay. Well, thank you guys very much. This is Cyberbulls. Follow us, please. Watch us we go live every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks all.